All right, hello, my name is Caitlin Devitt. I'm a senior here at the University of Illinois, and I also work for the Frank Center. I'm here today to introduce Chris Cillizza. So he is an independent news creator with over 32,000 subscribers on Substack, and he also produces daily content about American politics from an independent perspective. Cillizza has also spent 5 years working for CNN, along with the Washington Post. He's also a former MSNBC political analyst and has frequently appeared on Meet the Press. Today, Colleen King will be interviewing him today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you for being here.
I'm thrilled to be here. This is great.
So tell us.
I wore my semi-Illini
orange
pants.
and blue.
Yes,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I did what I could. Yeah. Not on purpose, but I did realize it.
I did
and I'll claim
notice
credit.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. So Caitlin ran through some of your jobs. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your job is today? How would you describe it? What does it entail?
I mean, it's not like that dissimilar from what I've always done,
Okay.
which is like write and talk about politics. It's just I work for myself now, which is great. I highly recommend it if you can make it work. And the technology has come along that, like, if it was 10 years ago, it would have been harder. But now it's really easy to sort of just sign on and start a YouTube account or start a Substack account, start an Instagram account. And so I largely do the same kind of stuff. I kind of like write and talk about politics every day, which there are some good days and some bad days on that. But that has nothing to do with my, who employs me. But it's not that dissimilar. I think one of the things that a lot of people who go the independent route say is like, and they never let me speak my mind before. I never had that. My two bosses were Marty Barron at the Washington Post, who, if you've seen Spotlight, he was at the Boston Globe. They did the gigantic investigative work about the Catholic Church and sexual abuse. And then Jeff Zucker at CNN, and they let me, never one time did they say, like, don't do this or do. They'd be like, hey, I saw this story. They'd like flag story ideas, which was great because it meant they knew who I was. They knew how to email me. But like, I never felt that. So it's not like I'm finally free to speak my truth. Like that was never a big issue. Okay. But it is nice to kind of like be doing it for yourself and, like seeing it succeed or fail on your own merits. I mean, it's a little daunting, but it's interesting.
How would you describe your product for people who might not be consuming it every day?
Politics, a lot of politics, a little bit of personal stuff, as much as my wife will allow me to write about. She doesn't love me writing about personal stuff. But I do write about being a dad and getting laid off. I got laid off from CNN in 2022, week after Thanksgiving 2022. I wrote a lot about that in 2023 because it was very, raw. Yeah. Less now. But I would say I try, and it's really hard in the political space because no matter what you do, people assume that you have like some agenda. But I really try to be in that independent, both from big legacy media, but also from the two political parties, and kind of call balls and strikes. One person's, until we get robotic umpires, one person's strike is not always the other person's strike, but I try. And I write a bunch. I write 2 to 3 things a day on Substack, and I make 2 YouTube videos every day. Well, not the weekend. 2 videos every weekday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then who's your target audience?
Good question. I don't really know. I mean, I would say anyone. I've always tried to. I think if you limit yourself to just people who are like super into politics, are like, ooh, what's going to happen in Tennessee 7 tonight?
Yeah.
I mean, I care about that. But if you limit yourself only to that, it's a pretty small group. I mean, it's not tiny, but it's small-ish. So I've always tried to say, like, I want to make sure the bar for entry for people who are like, I don't really know all the jargon about politics. I don't really, you know what I mean? Like, I don't, because when I started covering it, I didn't know any of the jargon about politics either. I mean, people would say stuff on the phone with me and I'd be like, yep. Yeah, no, yeah, you got to watch out for the B, C, D, or whatever it was. So it was always some acronym. And then I'd like type into the computer, like, what is B, C, D? I mean, So I try to make it accessible, and I think that's super important because for anyone who's not read Bowling Alone, it's an amazing book about how we don't socialize anymore. It was written in the 90s. It's only gotten worse since then. And one of the big pieces of that is civic engagement as it relates to politics, whether that's coming to stuff like this, coming to candidate forums, running for office, volunteering. It's all just, and it's not just young people. It's like the people over 65 do it less now. People 50 to 65 do it less now. And so I'm just a big believer. It's like, man, we get the government that we vote for. People love people, anytime you write about like Congress, people are like, they're the worst. And I'm like, you voted for them. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's a lot easier to be like, I can't believe so-and-so is in office than look in the mirror and say like, okay, like what am I voting for? Whether you're in a swing district or a very Democratic district, a very Republican district, we get the people that the system produces. And, and so I just want more people to understand it's politics. Even if you say like, I don't really care about politics, it impacts your life. The laws that state legislatures pass, the laws that city councils pass, certainly what happens at the national level. You've seen that with funding to universities, whether it's Harvard or Brown or all these places making deals with Trump. Yeah. Like it matters. It does have an effect, even if you don't think it has an effect, or even if you think like politics, that's not for me. One encouraging thing is that participation in the last Donald Trump has been great for getting people more actively involved in voting. Turnout has been actually surprisingly high in the last 3 elections, which is great. Because I'm a big believer we just need more and more people to vote. Still we're at 60, maybe 60%, 58, 59% of eligible voters, not just the population. People are eligible to vote.
Yeah.
So it means 40% don't. I just am trying to say like politics can be for anyone, and you should pay attention to it. You don't have to pay attention to it as much as I do, but you should pay attention to it at some level.
Well, you kind of offer a service too for people who might not be watching his press conferences or Air Force One. Tell everybody about some of the posts you do.
One of the things that I do is like, look, most people don't have time to. He talks a lot, right? Like whether you like him, I actually like this about him. He's very accessible, and people will say like, well, he doesn't actually answer the questions. Well, very few politicians at the national level answer the question you ask them.
Right.
It's really frustrating as a reporter. But he talks and talks and talks and talks. He had a cabinet meeting on today, Tuesday. It was like 3 hours long. He gives speeches all the time. He gives press interviews all the time, and. I think of my parents. My mom worked in the health insurance. They're both. My father's passed away. My mom is retired, and hopefully is watching this because I'm an only child. So she has nothing. She has no excuse other than. And my parents aren't super political, and my mom is into it a little bit because of what I do for a living.
Sure.
But she's not going to like watch Donald Trump's full speech. And that has nothing to do with Trump. She's not going to watch a Joe Biden full speech or a Barack Obama full speech. And so one of the things I try to do is like, look, I can watch the whole speech. I can read through the whole transcript. I will go through it. I will pull out the lines that are either funny or interesting or fact-checkable. And provide that service. Because I think what people are looking for, this doesn't have to do with politics, I think this has to do with content more broadly. I think what people are looking for is like, there's so much, right? I think we all feel this, right? It's just so, you're like, inevitable, every day someone's like, did you see that story? And I'm like, no. Like, I just, did you see that, what the fill in the blank paper said? I'm like, no, like, I try to read a lot, but. And I think people are looking for trusted guides through all of that to say, look over here, and I'm going to explain why I look over here, and you don't need to look over here. There's a mountain over here. This is a molehill.
Yeah.
And so I try to do that. And I've really tried to do that my whole career, but even more so now because 20 years ago, the information landscape was much less, there wasn't AI, there was way less misinformation. There was some, but your ability to push it out broadly was limited. And now it's everywhere. So the information landscape has only gotten more and more complex.
Yeah.
And, I think.
Well, you've written a mission statement. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you see your coverage. or your purpose?
I try to, the two words I talk about all the time, and anyone who's watched my videos on YouTube, I talk about it in every video, because you gotta, one thing I've learned is, even though you think you've said it too, I did learn this from politics, even if you think you've said it too many times, it takes a long time for people to, like, I still occasionally will get an email from someone and they'll be like, I haven't seen you on CNN lately. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, they laid me off 3 years ago. So, you shouldn't have seen me on CNN.
Right.
So, like, it's really relevant to you, and you think everybody knows it, but most people don't. So I always say the two things that I try to be all the time, and, it's like anything else. You try, and sometimes you come up short, and sometimes you get there, but is independent and authentic. Independent, I've already talked about. I mean, one thing that's hard in the modern media landscape is the best way to make money is to be partisan in politics, because that's where people are willing to put their money. But I really try not to do that, and I try to always, I don't try to choose what I cover and what I write about based on what I think will get me more subscribers. And it is hard when you are in the independent space. I don't make a salary. I do have expenses. You have the analytics and the data on Substack and YouTube that allow you to see directly, I wrote this thing and I got this many subscribers. So it's very one-to-one, direct line.
Yep.
So the lure is there.
Yeah.
But I really try to keep those two words as my North Star. And like, am I doing this because, do I want to write about this or talk about this because I think it's going to perform well, or do I think it's important and it also might perform well? I mean, I think all of us, if you are a younger person who is in journalism or going into journalism or thinking about going to journalism, number one, awesome. We need more good people. I feel like everybody who is like 18 now that I know who are like seniors at my kids' school are like, I'm going to go into private equity. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I know, like, make a lot of money, I think. I don't really know. I've never been in the good about the making a lot of money piece. But it's like, we need good, smart people to be in journalism.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing it. And I just think it's a challenging environment, but not an environment without real opportunity.
So maybe you could talk about some of the things that you've learned since becoming independent. You've learned all kinds of new skills beyond just your writing ability and reporting.
So I was an English major in college. I took 0 business classes. I knew my wife would probably, I was saying it in the past tense, knew, my wife would probably say no, nothing about business. When you work for yourself, like you're like running a small business. I mean, I've only ever been good at like making the cookies. I'm not like great at like marketing the cookies or like paying the rent at the bakery.
Yeah.
I'm just good at making the cookies, It's like that scene in Office Space. I'm a people person, so I've had to learn a lot of those things. Like, okay, how do you make money on a Substack? Sort of obvious. You get subscribers, but like, how does that work? And how do you? I mean, dumb things like, how do you like set up a Stripe account so that you can make money on Substack? How does the YouTube, Google AdSense model work? How do you do all of these things? I didn't know any of that stuff. And we started a LLC in January of this year, which I should have done literally the day I started doing it. Like, just start a small a company that'll, it gives you a little bit of liability protection. And we live in a very litigious, I'm not like actively defaming people, but like it provides you a little bit of that. And, to the extent that this matters, it doesn't really matter. We're like a very small business. We get a little bit of tax breaks and stuff. But I didn't know, I had heard the word LLC before. I didn't know what the hell, I didn't know what it was. I'd worked at big companies. They took care of all that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't, dumb things like withholding on your taxes. Well, the company does that. I don't know how to do that. So like the tax bill, our accountant was like, you owe this much. I'm like, pardon? Because none of it had been taxed the whole year. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like stuff like that. So I've learned a lot about that element of it. But again, because I knew absolutely nothing. So I had a lot to learn.
Sure.
I knew a fair amount about journalism.
Yeah.
That piece isn't that different. In truth, the medium is different. But I mean, I've learned kind of some tricks of the trade about like, okay, like this is the kind of stuff that does what YouTube, for example. YouTube, the videos that are going to succeed on YouTube are right on the news. For someone like me, like right on the news, like Pete Hegseth, the drone strikes, like right on the news. Substack, you could write something about like the James Garfield's, brief. James Garfield would have been the greatest president ever if he hadn't been assassinated. Like no obvious news hook.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm not advising anyone to write about James Garfield, although he's a very interesting guy. But like that could succeed, whereas on YouTube it would be tougher, unless you already have a huge audience. So there's different little like editorial tricks of the trade that I've learned. But I would say the business side of it, I mean, understanding there is a business side of it, which I didn't really know.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about I always tell people this, it's 100% true. You know the first time I thought of journalism as a business? When I got the email telling me to come in and meet with the head of HR and the head of the DC bureau at CNN. And I sent a note to my agent and was like, what is this? He's like, well, you're probably getting laid off. I was like, wait, what? I thought we were running a nonprofit here. I mean, it's just, I never thought of it before then. That's on me. I should have been more aware than I was, but that's where it's been. And that's actually really interesting. Like an interesting piece of it that I never understood.
I think a lot of reporters don't understand.
Yeah, well, you didn't have to, because it was like, well, I remember when I left the Washington Post, I had been there for 10 years. My dad he was born in the 40s, and, he was like, why are you leaving? And I was like, well, I mean, I've been here for 10 years, and CNN's like a really good opportunity, and like, it's a big platform. And he was like, but the Washington Post has been good to you. It was like he was like a one company guy. I mean, that was a thing.
And it was the Washington Post.
And it was the Washington Post. Like, good. Why would you leave?
Right.
And that's kind of how I always felt. I never thought. People always say like, when did you make the decision to go into the independent space? I'm like, the day that CNN got rid of me. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I was not like I would have. Were there things that I didn't love there? Sure, like any big company.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure that if you're a student or a faculty member here, I'm sure there are things where you're like, well, that's annoying. Because it's a gigantic bureaucracy. Well, any of these places are the same. But I wasn't like, I got to get out of my contract tomorrow. I would have stayed and done it, and then they probably wouldn't have renewed me, and then I would have had to figure this out. But I didn't have like I wasn't like, that's it, I'm walking away. Because I didn't want to do all those things.
Yeah.
I didn't, I wanted to make the cookies.
Do you think in hindsight, do you think you were lucky that you got laid off on the early end of things?
1,000%. And I won't swear, because if Dan or Nancy Balls is watching, I worry about Dan. He'll keep me in line as he did at the Washington Post. People, when you get laid off or you have a setback in your life of any sort, no one knows what to say. It's like being at a funeral.
Yeah.
No one really knows what to say. There's nothing that's going to make it like good.
Right.
Like, hey, thanks so much, But everybody always would say to me, you know what, you're going to look back on this and you're going to say, that's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I will not swear of what I thought to myself, but I was like, really? Do you have a job that has healthcare attached to it for me?
Right.
Because like, otherwise this sucks. And I never thought I'd look back and be like, man, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm not sure it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because it was hard.
Yeah.
It was public. Like the benefit of being a public figure is you get a lot of cool stuff. The downside is just, if bad things happen, everybody knows about it. Everybody in our world, everybody in the regular world didn't, but everyone in the political world knew about it. So people would like come up to me at my kid's baseball game and be like, hey man, sorry. And I'd be like, it's nice, but I don't like know you, and it's hard because everybody knows your business.
Yeah.
But yes, I am glad now. I'm happier, I think. I checked this with my wife recently. Like, am I like doing better with like father, being a good dad, being a good husband, which are more important than like, being a good whatever I am now, like professionally. And she said, yeah. Now, I mean, I kind of put her on the spot. She was like, definitely no. I'm happier for sure. I think there's a level of freedom of being able to be like, oh, let's try this, let's try that. There's not a bureaucracy that you have to run through, which is really nice. And I did get a chance to get a little bit of a head start in that kind of independent space. I will tell you, when I first got laid off and started Substack and YouTube stuff, I'd get a call or a direct message or some kind of outreach once every 3 months from someone who I used to work with, and now I get 3 a week. Now, part of
they're
that's
coming to you
coming
for
to me being
advice.
like, hey man, we'd love to have coffee and talk about how to do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And part of that is, it's two things. One, legacy media continues to, go down by the hull,
Yeah.
and a lot of these people work there.
Yep.
And the other is independent media has become more of a viable financial option. It's like, it's very hard to leave a job where you make $150,000 for a job where you make $10,000. I mean, now that it's like, okay, well, I might be able to get to where I was or close to it. It's become more. So it's both of those things happening together.
Yeah.
It's not me, but I do think that's a testament to kind of like being, and I was not the first mover in any of these spaces, but being on the early-ish end, which again was not my choice.
Right.
But, I always told my kids, my wife and I always talk to, I'm sure if you're young, your parents have said like, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up. Which is like true, but it's a lot easier as a parent to say that than to have to actually like do it in your life. I was like, gosh, like I can't just like lay on the floor, for 8 months because I've told my kids like adversity makes you stronger, all the cliches that you spout when you're a parent. And so I kind of had to do it. It was hard.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it sucked. I mean, it sucked in the beginning. It was hard. It was like very challenging, and you start from zero. I had 0 subscribers. CNN owned all my intellectual property, so they owned all my email lists, my RSS feed, everything. So I had to kind of start from scratch. It was very challenging.
So how much of your job is being a salesperson now?
I mean, there's an ask in every single piece of content I create.
Yeah.
Like if it's a written thing, it's like, do you like news? Do you want to support independent news? It's $6 a month on Substack, or on YouTube, it's the independent, authentic spiel that I just gave you.
Yep.
I've learned you have to ask people. You can't assume that people. It's like running for office and needing money to fund it. You gotta ask. You can't just be like, "Hey, Colleen, great to meet you." Okay, next person. You have to be like,
Yeah.
"And I would really love your financial support." Like you gotta just kind of come out and say it. So. It's not 50-50. I think I'm still mostly in the content creation space, 75% of the time, 25% of the times all the other stuff, sharing it on social media, figuring out. The one thing that I don't do a good job of is big picture strategy, like where in a year, where could we be? In 2 years, where could we be? Where could we invest? Because I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to do that, but then Marjorie Taylor Greene resigned and I have to go, so it's not a ton. But it is much more a part of my job. I'm much more of a salesman now than I was when I worked at mainstream media because I didn't need to be. I mean, they have salespeople.
Right.
They have marketing people. They have social media people.
Yeah.
That's one of the great benefits of those places. It's also like the problem, they're too big. They have too many people.
Yeah.
So they can't pay all those people. But when you work there in the golden days, it was like, oh, somebody will handle all that. Now it's you who handles all that.
Well, you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene. So where do you think Republicans are going in terms of Donald Trump right now?
Yeah, she's interesting. Like, I'm old, so I remember. Do you remember Cindy Sheehan?
Yes.
So Cindy Sheehan was this woman whose son was killed in.
A Gold Star mother, right?
Yes, Gold Star mother. Her son was killed in either Afghanistan or Iraq. I can't remember, but while Bush was president.
Yeah.
And she held like a vigil. She like basically camped out at the Crawford Ranch like the whole summer that Bush was there.
Yeah.
And she became sort of this symbol of like resistance to Bush because
This is what, like 06 maybe, 05,
I think
06,
so.
07?
And man, I remember some of my more liberal friends, they hated George W. Bush. And she was like a Cindy Sheehan is, she was, and man, if you talk to them now, they're like, good old George W. Bush, he's all there in Dallas painting pictures and like they're like, man, I wish we had George W. Bush. I'm like, you hated him 20 years ago. So I feel like if you spend enough time in this world, you realize that everything kind of comes around. Like context is really, really, really important.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that we struggle with the most. Everything that happens now is like the first time this has ever happened. It's like, well, usually it's not. Like, isolation, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, an isolationist kind of America firster. That's what the Republican Party, that the 1920s, 1930s, even 1940s version of the Republican Party was a lot of that. I mean, there's not a lot of new ideas in politics. Like a lot of it's the same stuff. So I think what you're seeing is kind of the natural evolution. Look, Donald Trump conducted a hostile takeover of politics, but definitely the Republican Party in 2016. In early 2016, some of you are too young to remember this, but in early 2016, if you ask some, or 2015 certainly, if you ask someone who's going to be the Republican nominee, they would all tell you Jeb Bush. Son of a president, brother of a president, Bush name, money, he's from Florida, I'd been the governor.
Point.
Yeah, Jeb. And then like that didn't happen. And Trump was like, he just kind of took it over because the base of the party didn't want Jeb Bush. They wanted a Donald Trump-like figure. And so the last 10 years, I think, has been like mostly his force of personality uniting a very disparate group of Republicans. Like J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Steve Bannon.
Yeah.
They don't have a ton in common, views-wise, right? They're united under kind of the force of personality of Donald Trump. But Donald Trump is in his second term. He will be term limited out of office constitutionally January 20th, 2029. So it's like, and he's also a 79-year-old man.
Yeah.
When you look at the actuarial tables, he will not be around forever. So I think people are starting to think of what it looks like. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, look, I think there were two ways Republicans responded to Donald Trump. People who were in office who wanted to run for office. One was Ted Cruz is a good example. Ted Cruz doesn't agree with Donald Trump on most things, but Ted Cruz wants to be president. So Ted Cruz understood. Ted Cruz saw the train coming down the tracks eventually and kind of got on board. But Ted Cruz is definitely like, I think privately like, put another thing. He posted, I think Trump last night on Truth Social posted like 72 things. Like,
wow.
Oh, I did that. Oh. And I think Cruz kind of understands like how the game is played. All right, well, like I gotta get through this period of time because I want to be president and I'm not gonna become a Democrat. Like, and whereas like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think she believed all of it. I think she believed like Trump was like a true believer and like that that he really was America first and he did not want to put American troops in foreign climes. We were going to focus on America. That's a part of what he believes. He's like fundamentally, he's like a business guy and a negotiator. So he's like, well, makes sense or whatever. He's also very inclined to, I think, support the last view that someone has told him. So you want to be the last person to talk to him before he goes and speaks publicly.
Yeah.
And I think she really got disenchanted by that. I think she was like in. Like, I don't think she knew, like, wink, wink. Yeah, I mean, he says he hates the media, but really he understands the relationship that he has to have with the media. Like, I think she was like, yeah, fake media, fake news. And I think, that was never really him, but I think she believed it. And that's why I think she grew disenchanted by it. I also think, like, the whole, like, she's a hero, whatever, I think that's a little much, too. Some of these people, it's like... who was it? It was some Republican senator who like spoke out about Trump. It was Tom Tillis. He voted from North Carolina. He voted against the One Big Beautiful Bill. And it was like, Tillis stands up like, yeah, after he announced he was retiring and not facing, that's a lot easier as a politician.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I took the buyout and let me just make sure the money is deposited in my bank account and ding. Okay, let me tell you the real truth. It's like, well, yeah, it's easy to do it then. So I don't think she's like a hero or anything, but I do think she represents a part of the party that is, and Bannon is another voice in that space, who is very committed to this kind of like America, like real America first very focused on immigration, legal and illegal. There's very isolationist in terms of, they would not call it isolationist, but not wanting to involve the U.S. in foreign conflicts. Whereas like very, very skeptical of like the techno bro world. Whereas like, I mean, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and JD Vance like come out of the techno bro world.
Yeah.
I mean, two of them are still in the techno bro world. And like their views are much more internationalist, much more kind of like globalist broadly. You know, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, to the extent that she has a view, would probably be skeptical on crypto. They're obviously not skeptical on crypto. She'd be skeptical on AI. They are gung-ho on AI.
Yeah.
So like there is that fight. The question is like, is the nomination just like if it's just Vance in 2028, or is it like, you know, interestingly enough, who is like kind of more of an America firster by nature is Don Jr. He'd be more in the kind of that camp, but he and JD are friends. Maybe they don't run against each other, but it's like, will the America First crowd have a candidate? I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene would be that right messenger, but a real serious candidate to run against Vance in the techno, crypto, AI world community. That's where I think the split is within the party right now.
What about the Democrats? Where do you see them right now?
Not good. I mean, look, they're going to, they had a good 2025 election because they're not Donald Trump. They're going to have a good 2026 because they're not Donald Trump and they're not in charge of anything. It's always better to be the party out of power because you can be like, look what these guys are doing. They're screwing everything up. I mean, the story of the last 15 years in America, 20 years in American politics has been like, people don't like either side.
Yeah.
So they give one side a chance and they're like, no, nope. And they give the other side a chance, like, they're all so bad. Let's go back to A. You know, I mean, I always say to people, like, the reality of the political system we have, it's a binary choice, right? So it's like, your options are like that bottle of water or my phone. Your options are not some idealized third choice.
Yeah.
You either get bottle of water or phone. That's it. And so they're like, well, let's try phone. And they're like, phone was bad. Well, there's that bottle of water. Maybe we'll try bottle of water. It's not like this like ringing endorsement of the other side.
Yeah.
So I think Democrats will have a good 2026. Again, historical trends would suggest that they're going to win back the House. The Senate is harder, but not impossible, but harder, just because of where the seats are. But I don't think that solves the like brand problem. The Democratic brand is at or very close to its lowest ebb in modern political history. So post World War II.
Yeah.
If you sit in a focus group and you ask people what they think of the Democratic Party, the two words that will come up the most often are weak and woke. That is not a recipe to win national elections.
No.
The weak part is self-explanatory. People like to vote for strong. And the woke part is, you know, one of my favorite things that Trump says, it makes no sense what Trump says, but like it like a lot of things with him, like tonally and the vibes are right for what people actually believe. He goes, I mean, you vote for Democrats, they want transgender for everyone. And I'm like, you mean like we're all gonna have to be transgender? That's what, like clearly they don't support, right? But like,
Yeah.
It's like a vibes thing, right? It's like people, a lot of people who are loosely affiliated with one of the two parties think of Democrats as the party of like biological males in female sports. Now, it's a very small percentage of people. Lots of Democrats don't support that, but that's the context of it. I always remind people, I mean, you're in Illinois, so I grew up in Connecticut. I didn't get to see any good ads either because it's not a competitive state. But if you were in a swing state, the ad, I was in North Carolina for a soccer thing for my son right before the election. And you know what ad they ran relentlessly? You want to guess? Is anybody who's into politics want to guess what ad the Trump people ran relentlessly? The ad that said, it was from 2019.
Okay.
Kamala Harris shouldn't have said it if she ever thought she was running for president, but
On
she
The
said
View?
it.
Oh.
No, that was terrible too. But no, this was from 2019 where she said, yeah, I support gender reassignment surgery for prisoners. It was from 2019. She never talked about it in the 2024 campaign. Granted, it was a brief campaign, but she never talked about it.
Yeah.
And it was the famous tagline, like, Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for us. Now, again, I dare you to find a time, now it's a 3-month campaign, but where Kamala Harris was like, and I want transgender surgeries for everyone. Of course he's not going to say it because she knows that. But the point is like they ran that ad into the ground because it was like Democrats don't get us. And if people feel like you don't share their values, you will not win. But Donald Trump is very good at channeling, which is weird because he is not an up from the bootstraps guy, but he's very good at channeling like the vibes in the country. And he did that far better. So I think Democrats there's a very classic decision to be made. Is the future of the party, last month is a great example, is the future of the party, Abigail Spanberger, very moderate, former CIA operative, represented a district in Virginia, north of Richmond, in between Richmond and DC, very moderate district. Or is the future, and he's born in Uganda to non-American citizen parents, so he's not going to be president, but is the future, broadly speaking, Zoran Mamdani? That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Tonally, issues-wise. Zoran Mamdani is not a Democrat, he's a Democratic Socialist. I know he ran as a Democrat. It's like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a Democratic Socialist. He chooses to caucus with Democrats, but he's not a Democrat. AOC, same thing. I think AOC will, I think she should, just from a political perspective, run for president. She'll be very formidable in that race, in a Democratic primary. I don't know. Is Andy Beshear, who's the governor of Kentucky, who's the two-term governor of a very red state, Democrat? Is he a better choice? I mean, I think that's the fight that will play out. I think people underestimate the chances of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being the nominee at their own peril. I think I would say I guess maybe Gavin Newsom right now, but I see more holes in him than I do in her. If you said to me today, Chris, like, you got to bet $1,000 on someone to be the nominee, I would bet on her.
Wow.
Now, she has to run, obviously,
Yeah.
and it's 3 years away. These are the things I spend my life on, but I would bet on her. So there's a big choice to be made, and that debate is still just sort of happening. I would remind people, Hakeem Jeffries is the House Minority Leader, is a constituent of Zoran Mamdani as mayor.
Yeah.
He endorsed him like 1 week before the election.
What does that say to you?
Well, it's stupid by Hakeem Jeffries because, like,
For waiting too long is
yes,
stupid?
because do you think that Donald Trump and the Republican Party is going to be like, okay, we can only tie Zoran Mamdani to Democrats who endorsed him? Give me a break. Of course not.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, and a supporter of Zoran Mamdani's socialist policies in every swing district in the country. And they're not going to be like, well, we can't attack this person because they said, all these moderates who weren't endorsing him. I'm like, give me a break, man. It's not going to change anything. If I was Hakeem Jeffries, I would be like, look, do I agree with everything Zoran Mamdani says? No, I don't. But the Democratic Party is a big tent. And you know what I do agree with? The passion and energy and excitement that he created, particularly among young people. We need to bottle that and organize it and do a better job. Like, I think it's so dumb. First of all, when you don't endorse, it becomes a story every day. People are like, are you going to endorse Zoran Mamdani?
Right.
He's like, oh, I'm getting closer to it. You're like, give me a break, man. The election's in 3 days.
Yeah.
Chuck Schumer never endorsed him. I mean, like, what's the... anyway, I think they have a fight coming. And it will happen in the 2028 election.
Who else should we be watching? Wes Moore?
Yes. So I think if you had to do like a top tier, I would do AOC, Newsom. Newsom has done a lot of good things. Again, when I say good things, I don't mean good things like I agree with his policies or whatever. I mean good things from like a political perspective. He's done a lot of good things this year. I did not think Gavin would be capable of doing as many smart things as he's done. He's done a lot of smart things.
Give me an example.
The ICE protests, National Guard being put in. There's a lot of ways that could go. When the national spotlight's on you, there's a lot of ways that can go bad.
Right.
And I thought he handled it well. And he has emerged as the foil to Donald Trump, and that's what the party wants. Weirdly, the being Trump on Twitter, like trolling Trump, like, thank you for your attention to this matter, and like writing in all capital letters has worked. It's not something that like a swing voter is going to be like, oh, what a great Twitter, what a great tweet. But like the Democratic base, they like that stuff. So the two of them, Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, the governor of Pennsylvania, he's going to, he has to get reelected in 2026. I think he will get reelected in 2026. He represents a swing state. Wes Moore for sure, really naturally talented. And as my friend Chuck Todd noted, and this is the thing people don't pay attention to, Wes Moore's job before getting into office was he ran the Robin Hood Foundation.
Yeah.
So he knows a ton of gigantic donors, and that matters. I started off the year thinking Gretchen Whitmer would be good, but I don't even know if she's going to run. She and Trump get along really well.
Yeah.
Which is not, that does not behoove you to, that will not endear you to the Democratic base right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else is kind of interesting in that space. I mean, I think it'll be a big field. I think a lot of people will run. But I think those are the ones that, I know J.B. Pritzker is absolutely 100% running for president. I don't see it. I mean, people are like, he's a billionaire. I'm like, yeah, I'm aware that he is a billionaire. I don't see that working in a Democratic primary. I think Andy Bashir is going to run for president. I think he would be an intriguing nominee. Don't think he can be the nominee of the Democratic Party in this Democratic Party. I'm trying to think who else I'm forgetting. Those are mostly the big ones.
Okay. I want to get to some audience questions here, but we had some submitted from our online audience, so thank you. One question was, how long?
Thanks, Mom.
How long until big cities, for example, Charlotte, North Carolina, have only online news media and not print editions of former newspapers?
Sooner than you think. Under 5 years.
Wow.
I wonder how long the Washington Post will continue printing I mean, look, the answer to the question is they will print editions as long as they make more money from the advertising in the print editions than it costs them to distribute the print editions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that, but those streams are crossing. Yeah, 5 years. Like, is the Charlotte Observer going to make it print newspaper in 5 years? I'd be surprised. Miami Herald.
Yeah.
Does the Indianapolis paper still print a print edition?
I
They probably
believe
do.
So. Yeah.
That I would be. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut, the Hartford Courant.
Yeah, playing
It's
Cleveland
so
Plain Dealer.
I don't go there anymore because after my dad passed, my mom moved down to where we live, but in D.C. But I used to go home, in college and then after college, and the Hartford Courant went from like this big to this big to this big to this big, and now it's like 3 AP stories. One or whatever, McClatch, whatever, I don't know who owns them now, but whatever wire service, and then ads for like cars. Because you know who reads print newspapers? Old people, which I'm rapidly becoming, but like so it's like, that's who the ads are for. It's like retirement homes, Oldsmobiles, like cars that nobody under 65 drives. And that's it, and it's just shrinking. Eventually eventually will come sooner than you think. I think we are in a period of exponential change now in media, both on the business and the editorial side, and not gradual. And so I think it's things that you think will be around forever will not be around forever. I always say this, I said it 300 times today, I'll say it 301st time. You need to financially support the journalism that you want to exist in the world. If you do not support, and if you're in college, I understand you guys get a pass, but if you're an adult, if you are 25 or older, you need to support it does not have to be me, it doesn't have to be the Washington Post, it does not have to be mainstream media at all, but you need to financially support the kind of journalism you want to see in the world, because if you do not, it will not exist in the world. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Like, we are much closer to that than I think people realize. I think people are like, we'll always have these things. I would not assume that. The business models are just disastrously bad. Every single week, some news organization lays off a not insignificant number of people. Okay.
Yeah.
But yes, I would say Charlotte under 5 years.
Wild.
Yeah.
Caitlin's got a microphone. If anybody in the room has a question.
So in your podcast, you mentioned about gerrymandering.
Yes.
And you mentioned, obviously, the House of Representatives should for instance, you have the Senate, which only have 2 senators for every state. You have Rhode Island, which is a small state, and California has a big state.
Yep.
They both have 2 senators, so it's equal. Whereas the House obviously has more. They're supposed to be representative of each state.
Yep.
And you expressed concern about Abbott having changing, was it the 30 to 8?
In Texas.
So let me ask you a question. In Texas, right. So shouldn't we be more concerned about what Gavin Newsom plans to do in California, where there's, 52 representatives, and he wants to make it even more unbalanced, even though Republicans got 38% of the vote?
Yep. I think go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. Should we be more concerned about
I think we should
Newsom?
be equally concerned. I think they are both bad, period. I think what is happening, they went through different methods. For people who don't follow this stuff super closely, every 10 years there's a census. After the census, so 2021 was the most recent time, they rejigger and redraw the congressional lines to try to make them representative. Basically what winds up happening is, particularly in a state like Texas, people are just flooding into the state. So now these members of Congress who are supposed to represent 350, 400,000 people now represent 800,000 people, because the number of districts is finite for that 10-year period. They can grow or they can contract. What Texas did is they, through the legislature, said, we're going to redraw the lines for 2026 to make it 5 more seats, to probably help Republicans win 5 more seats. California, through Newsom, because he's running for president, said, okay, well, even California, to its credit, created an independent redistricting commission because they said, you know what, it's terrible. Why are we having these partisan politicians draw lines? It's just going to make everything more partisan. We're going to have an independent commission that is not partisan or bipartisan at a minimum to draw the lines to make it more competitive. So, like, you don't have these districts. And Illinois, by the way, is one of the Democratic-controlled state. Worst, if you look at, okay, yeah, you have to be a real nerd to spend your time looking at the Illinois congressional map. But if you do, you'll be like, why is the one district it's like, it like runs like this wide and then it's like gigantic and then you're like, that doesn't make sense. And the reason for it is because they're trying to maximize the number of Democratic seats. It's a terrible process. Yes, to me, the people, what Newsom did, and it succeeded, it passed via ballot initiative. They're going to, so they had an independent commission. Basically, Newsom was like, in order to deal with what happened in Texas, to counteract it, we're going to put something on the ballot in 2025 that says, for the next 2 elections, we'll use this map that the very overwhelmingly Democratic legislature will draw that will get 5 more seats out for Democrats. And to your point, I think there will now be, if everything goes to point, I think there's 52 or 53 House seats in California. 44 or 45 of them will be held by Democrats. 8 or 9 of them will be held by Republicans.
Mm-hmm. Right now it's 43 to 9.
43 to 9, and it'll be less.
That's what it is currently.
Right.
And he wants to make it even worse.
Right. And in Texas, it will be 30 to 8. I think they're, I mean, like, to me, it's like, okay, yes, 5 seats out of 52 percentage-wise is less than 8 seats out of 30, no question. And I always say this, you know where Donald Trump got the most votes out of any state in the country? California. I mean, it's just gigantic. I mean, like, yes, he got 39% of the vote, but he got a ton of votes. There are a lot of people who voted for him there. I think it is horrendous for democracy. It is bad for the average voter. They barely know who their congressperson is now. They're going to know even less. You've got districts that make no logical sense in terms of communities of interest. You know, there's the district tonight in Tennessee, for example. It runs the entire length of the state. It's just they basically said, like, okay, well, Nashville is 2 Democrats, so we're gonna take a little bit of Nashville and we're gonna draw that in, but it goes all the way to Kentucky. I mean, it's no logical person would look at it and be like, yes, that district. Or
this one goes to East St. Louis.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And again, they do it because they want to maximize whoever's in power. They want to maximize their seats. Indiana today, the state house in Indiana put a map. It is currently 7-2, 7 Republicans, 2 Democrats. That would be 9-0 Republicans. How did they do it? It's not complicated. What's the biggest Democratic area in Indiana? Indianapolis. They take a piece of Indianapolis and they basically just make a spoke that goes way into the rural areas that the part of Indianapolis gets counteracted. And so it's a Republican district now, as opposed to one Indianapolis district.
Yeah.
It's just bad, and it's only going to get worse. Pandora's box is open. Virginia is probably going to do it. Now that Abigail Spanberger has won, they're probably going to do it to try to help Democrats. Wes Moore is trying to do it in Maryland. This is a thing where both parties are, they're just totally self-interested and they don't care about the average voter or the average person. I think it's all bad, and it's not going to stop. But yes, thank you for nobody knows about redistricting and gerrymandering. It's super important.
Yeah.
So to try and encourage maybe third-party candidates at some point, how do we break up the closed primary system that's in place that really discourages anybody to go in and pick their best candidate, because it's either you're one end or the other?
Yeah.
Those of us in the middle, how do we ever get to the independent?
It's really hard. You need the only way that we're going to change the kind of people we elect. Politicians are not going to change it. Politicians are a reactive species. They're Pavlovian. They do what. I think this will. Saying that comes off as a criticism of them, and I actually don't mean it that way. I always say to people, let's say in your job, if you're the boss, and every 2 years, all the people who work for you vote by a simple majority whether you should keep your job or not. Would that change how you behaved? Probably. Of course, right? Because that's what they do. Every 2 years, so they tend to try to do things that they think their people will be for. But by nature, then, it makes them reactive. They will not change. What has to change is the incentive structure for them. That's the only way. And the only way you do that is systemic, broad-scale change. Open primaries is one. Ranked choice voting is another. Look, ranked choice voting is a pain in the butt because it takes a little bit longer. But I would have been interested. So New York City has ranked choice voting in the primaries, but not in the general election. General election should just, you vote for Andrew Cuomo or Mamdani or Sliwa or Eric Adams because he was still on the ballot even though he had dropped out, or the 100 other people who are running who you've never heard of. I would have been interested to see, if it had been ranked choice, I could have seen Cuomo winning. Without ranked choice, Mamdani was going to win. I mean, it was, I'm surprised Cuomo got 41% of the vote, but it's basically because every Republican voted for him, because Sliwa got 5% of the vote. But you have to make systemic change. You have to change the incentive structure. In ranked choice voting, the incentive structure is, yes, I need the people who are for me, but I also need to be ranked second or third among the people who aren't really for me. So I need to find ways to reach those people who don't agree with me on everything. It changes in an open primary system. Okay, yes, it's good to get Democratic votes, but I also need to get votes from other people. That's what we want. But you know who's against those things? The party regulars. It takes their power out of their hands. They don't want that. They want to keep it. And of course, if the biggest danger for 400 of the 435 people running for the House is a primary, not a general election, which is the case with the districts in this. I mean, Illinois is a gigantic state. There's probably 2 races that will be competitive next November. There's primaries. Raja Krishnamurthy's seat will be Democratic seat. But overall, there's no competitiveness. So what are they solving for? Okay, I got to win a primary. What does that mean? I got to get to the far right or the far left. They have in fact, they have a disincentive to do anything other than that, because if you do that, then it's this guy he's not a real party warrior like we need in these times. So they do the easy thing. I think you have to change how it works, and that's hard. Because educating people on ranked choice voting you can barely get people to vote at all, much less understand, okay, there's 5 candidates, you need to rank them, and then if your person gets eliminated, then we'll go to your second. It's hard.
Maybe you can give us a pep talk here for the last final words here about this, where journalism is going for our students here in the room and online.
If you are 50 plus in journalism, It's hard sledding, man. Not gonna lie, not easy. Like, if you are 30 and under, it's a fascinating time to be. It's a fascinating time to be in journalism anyway, but in like that morbid, fascinating way if you're plus 50. But if you're under 50, under 30, it's a great time. There's more opportunity to grow and look, like old dog, new tricks. Like, I was able to figure it out. I'm no genius in journalism, technology, or business. So actually, I shouldn't be as pessimistic about 50 plus, although I'm still 49. So I'm not 50. It is a challenging time. The tectonic plates are shifting in politics, in culture, and in journalism. I think anyone who debates that is not paying attention. Challenging times create nerves and stress, but also opportunity. And I think there's a ton of opportunity that exists out there. I think the barrier for entry to do journalism is lower than it's ever been before. There's bad to that too, but let's focus on the good. And I think people's desire for content and for trusted guides has never been higher, because we've never had more information just flooding the system, and misinformation and disinformation and purposely false information. So I think that there's always a role for that. And that's how I see myself, and I think that's how you should see yourself going forward if you are interested in it. It's like, how can I become someone who people will trust, whether it's in politics or sports or health and wellness or whatever? Like, okay, there's all this stuff out there. You don't have enough time to consume all of it. Like, I'll give you an example. Wirecutter. The New York Times bought Wirecutter, tech kind of like advice.
Shopping reviews.
I use that for everything now, because I'm not the guy who's going to be like, do I need the MacBook 14-inch or the MacBook Air or what's the best wireless AirPods? I'm not going to be that. I know there are people like that. There's a guy who I used to work with who was the Richmond guy at the Post and then came national, and he's at the New York Times now, named Mike Shear. Great guy. He's like the dude lined up outside the Apple store when the new phone drops. That's not me. He's awesome at that. I used to use him. He was like my personal wire cutter. I'd be like, do I need a new phone? But if you're not that, you need someone. I need a wire cutter for all the things of my life. I want someone to be like, here's the meditation app you should check out. Because I'm not going to be like, let me test this one out. Let me test this one out. Like, you need that. And journalism and politics and journalism in general, I think, can function as that. It's a real utility, as opposed to you need to make the journalism you're doing a need to have, as opposed to a nice to have. Because need to have you pay for, nice to have you're like, maybe if that stock, if crypto, if Bitcoin goes back up, I'll buy it, and that's like what we have to do. I think we have to redefine that. We need to tell people why they need it in their lives, as opposed to assuming that work is done for us.
So if people need to know about the Tennessee special election tonight, where can they learn something?
I will go right from here to your office, and we're doing a live stream on my YouTube, Chuck Todd's YouTube, my Twitter, Chuck's Twitter, Decision Desk HQ, if you follow them. It'll probably be about an hour. We'll do it until it gets called, or I have to leave to drive back to Indianapolis. Chuck will stay on.
Yep.
But yeah, we're doing a ton of that stuff. We had over 500,000. We did one on election night 2025 live stream. We had over 500,000 people.
Incredible.
Which I was like stunned by. I was like, is there too many zeros? Not like at any one time, but over the course of the 5.5 hours. I just think, again, that's the potential that exists with this technology. People still want news, information, and analysis. The way that they're doing it and consuming it is now, as opposed to reading it. But you just have to adapt. It's like somebody said today, you can mourn what's gone by, but if all you do is mourn what's gone by, you're missing a lot of opportunity that exists. And there's a lot of opportunity. Thank you all. Enjoy your, oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for coming. Have a good night.